Bonjour tout le monde. Aujourd'hui, nous allons parler des adjectifs qualificatifs. We briefly talked about this in the Dossier 5 or at the beginning of the course, but we have 2 lessons actually allocated to it, so let's get started. So remember that adjectif qualificatif, again, they are describing a noun, right? So for instance, here, une chemise bleue, it's telling us the color of the t-shirt. Okay, you'll see that for Dossier 3, I believe, or Lesson 3, we talk about the place of the adjective and as well as colors, right? Colors are an adjective because again it describes the noun that that is allocated to. And then Leçon 4 kind of talks about the same thing, but more so with how to accord the adjective. So the rule when it comes to colors, remember that it will be according to the number or the gender, sorry, the masculine or feminine, and the number as well, so singular or plural. So for instance, je porte une chemise bleue. Chemise is féminin singulier, right? Which is why I'm adding an E at the end of bleu. Nous porterons des souliers verts. And again, you can tell the gender and the quantity based on the adjective, right? We can tell that vert is plural and masculin, so that means that soulier is masculin and plural. However, there are 2 particular colors that do not go with the number and the gender, and that would be marron and orange. The reason being is marron is another name for chestnut in French, so because it's already allocated to another noun, technically, you don't need that accord. Je porte une jupe marron. Please note here that there's no E at the end of that color. And same thing here, j'aime bien les plumes orange. There's no S at the end of orange because marron and orange are genderless and no quantity involved. Okay. Another thing that you need to know is that adjectives for colors, and you'll see a lot more other adjectives, are usually placed after the noun, and that's different than in English, right? Because if you say, I have a red truck, the adjective is placed before the noun and not after. But in French, it's after. Alright, speaking of, like I've mentioned, most of the time the adjectives that you'll be using will be placed after the noun. But there is, and if you remember, I did mention this at the beginning of class, I mentioned bags, but I've added an N to it. Anything that falls under bags, remember that's beauty, age, now nominal numbers, we'll talk about that in a bit, and goodness and size will be placed before the noun. Alright, so and also remember this very well because I'll talk about something else on this next slide. These particular ones will always be placed before the noun, all right? At least for this course. There are a lot more rules when it comes to the placement of adjectives, which we'll not go over in this course just because we're going over basics. But there are times where there might be an adjective like magnifique, magnificent, that it's clearly under goodness, but depending on the emphasis, it might be either before or after. But for the sake of this course, I won't be too harsh on the placement because that is something that you'll revisit in advanced grammar if you're taking that, and again, next semester if you're taking French. All right, so these are the verbs like I mentioned if it falls under bangs, right? Note that all of that, grand would be size, petit size, beau would be beauty, okay? All of that would fall under bangs. There are some exceptions, of course, that I want you to know for this course. Âgé clearly falls under age, but then when it's âgé, it's basically a synonym to vieux, will be actually after the noun, right? I would say les vieilles personnes, but in this particular instance, it'd be les personnes âgées. Same thing with les means ugly. Une maison laide, that clearly falls under beauty, but it is an exception and it'll fall right after. Okay. Notice that with all the adjectives, you need to know about the accord, right? This is something that I will be very strict on. Whether or not there are some adjectives where you're not sure where to place it, you need to know the accord really well, right? So adding an e to les because maison is feminine, and adding an es because les personnes is feminine and plural. Un chien méchant as well. Notice that a mean dog, not a bad dog, because mauvais means bad, right? So bad would be under bags before the adjective, but mean will go after. All right. Moving on. So this is a clear example where merveilleux could fall under goodness, so it goes before, but you can also say un moment merveilleux. You might see as well magnifique, un magnifique moment or un moment magnifique. Again, it depends on emphasis. If I were to read this right now, it's un merveilleux moment, un magnifique moment, right? You see that emphasis? If it's after, it's less of an emphasis, right? Un moment merveilleux. Okay, so this is the way that you use adjective when you're writing. If you want to put more emphasis, place it before the noun. Okay, so it's a question of opinion as well, right? So if it's really magnifique for you, so place it before. If it's meh, place it after. Okay, and that's of course with all the ones where you're not sure whether or not it falls under bangs because it is somewhat of an opinionated adjective. All right, so I want to bring your attention to the accent as well, the conjugation, because there are a particular one where it will change form, whether or not you're using a voyelle, and also if it's masculin. Okay, and I'm saying and or not or, because if you had, let's just say nouvelle, for instance, you can say un nouvel ami because ami is masculin, starts with a vowel, but you can't say une nouvelle amie and you conjugate that the same way. It needs to be une nouvelle. So the variation for the vowel only applies for masculin. Same thing with ami. It's not un beau ami, it's un bel ami. Okay, if I were to make this into plural, it would be des beaux amis. Okay, it's not des belles with an S. Okay, same thing here, des vieux hommes. Right, it's not just simply adding an S. Okay, so only remember this particular variation when it comes to masculin singulier with a vowel. Okay, another thing as well is les chambres sont confortables. You could use this as well, right? The placement here, of course, will go after the verb because you're just saying the rooms are comfortable. If you were to say comfortable rooms, right? So in French, because comfortable does not fall under bags, it will just be les chambres confortables. Okay, moving on. This is from your cahier d'activité. So again, we'll go over this together. Okay, so the first question here, notre maison magnifique d'architecte. So you'll probably see something like that on the Dossier 6 quiz that we're going to do. So now, again, if you want to put emphasis, either could work here. You could say notre magnifique maison d'architecte est parfaite pour les voyages, or you could say notre maison magnifique d'architecte. Okay, so it's up to you. You'll see in the answer key it says notre magnifique maison, but I will go with both. I could definitely use both here because it's a question of opinion in case you don't know whether or not it falls in bags. Like it could be either or. Est parfait pour les voyageurs à la recherche de vacances. Here or there, authentique does not fall under bangs, so we'll go with right there after the noun. authentique. Okay, don't forget that vacances is plural, so I do want to be adding my, I want to put this a bit, there we go. I do want to be adding my S. Okay, so that's something that I would be very strict on. Okay, admirer la vue merveilleuse et profiter d'un, etc. Okay, admirer la, and most of the time you'll see that if I'm not having some sort of emphasis on it, I'll just go after. In case you're wondering, in case you're not very sure, always place it after, because that probably is the case. Okay. Mer, oops. It's not like that. Merveilleuse, right? C'est la vue merveilleuse. Et profiter d'un moment agréable, that's pretty simple. So that just goes after. Okay. Okay. Dans la maison, passer du temps avec notre personnel accueillant, right? So welcoming. Again, that does not fall in bags, so we'll just place it here. Banks, I should say. Personnel is masculin singulier, so that will be reflected in the adjective. Méliane, notre cuisinière, excellent, right? Excellent will fall under bags. I mean, it's goodness, right? Notre excellente cuisinière, that's another emphasis that I want to put to that adjective. Et Raoul, notre guide local. Local is pretty simple, does not fall at all under bags, so we'll just place it after the noun. Alright, so hopefully that was helpful, and again, you will see this on Dossier 6, so just make sure you understand that really well, especially these particular one where it's clear that it falls before the noun. Make sure that you remember these very well. Okay, it's with adjectives that whether or not it should have an emphasis, that you could place it either before or after. All right, merci beaucoup et à la prochaine.